Hey everybody, it's rumination and application time for this week. So we're talking about Hugh Blair. Um, it was my collaborative group lead this week with Kelsey. So we did lectures 1 and 2 out of the Belles Lettres this week, and then Tracy did the rest of them, a lot of them, and on Thursday. So we talked a lot about taste and virtue and the differences between taste as like an actual taste and then taste as metaphor, and go back and forth with that. Kelsey had like kind of the introduction. Lecture 1 was the introduction, then I got into taste. One of the main sections or parts that I pulled out of lecture 2 was about halfway down that talking about ornamentation in taste. So trying to get past that ornamentation to get to that real taste, to get to that real individual taste, and Blair talks a lot about that. We need to be able to understand ornamentation, but also realize what is underneath. That's my own words. Here from Blair from Lecture 2 on taste. He may be deeply impressed by such beauties as he perceives, but he perceives only what is in some degree coarse, what is bold and palpable, while chaster and simpler ornaments escape his notice, in this state taste generally. So trying to be, even though the ornament has much more visual beauty, there may be metaphorically and more like educationally deeper meaning. My words are not coming. Deeper knowledge to those inner thoughts inside the ornamentation. And then sometimes there may not be anything either, like the examples that we were talking about, like decorating cakes, and having that facade, having that ornament, but then there really wasn't any deeper meaning on the inside. There was no actual cake. So where was the cake? Where was that deeper meaning? It was a false meaning on the inside. So sometimes there may be a false meaning on the inside, and the ornament is masking that. So there could be that as well. There could be two separate things. So I think that would be interesting, because I don't think he gets into much as that, where what happens or how can we get into if there's a false meaning underneath, or if there's not that deeper thought underneath. So what happens if you cut into that beautiful cake, using my metaphors, and it's styrofoam, and you've been lied to, and there's nothing there. Or like one thing that's really popular now too is like decorative boxes, like that look like books, or like little safe boxes that look like books that you put on your bookshelf. And and then you open it up, and there's no page, no information. It looks like a book, but there's nothing in there. How do we reconcile that? How do we reconcile that with personal taste? So we make these beautiful things like decorating cakes and boxes that look like books to say a certain thing. But then we don't need that real meaning, we don't need that real substance, because we actually don't want the substance, we just want the ornament. We don't care about the substance, we just want to show it off to other people, that we have it. And Blair is trying to get at that it's important to have both, that ornaments are good, but we need to be weary of the showing of the ornament, ornamentation, and the actual, I lost my train of thought. And actually wanting that deeper knowledge. And in my last few enlightenment posts, we've been in enlightenment now for at least 2 weeks, probably longer, I think. I've been going a lot back to my to what I studied when I studied abroad in London. I spent a lot of time at the British Museum. The British Museum was specifically developed during the Enlightenment era. And they had just been working at the time to redevelop some of the original galleries and actually return them to those original Enlightenment era galleries to show what they originally were like during that time period. So like Cabinets of Curiosity, because they weren't original, or they weren't just like separate exhibits like we have today, where it was just Egyptian in one room, Greek and Roman in one room, all separated in all curated collections. It was Cabinets of Curiosity in one big hall, all meshed all together to all soak us in all with all of this information, to just like bring it all in, to constantly surround us with all of this knowledge. And a lot of people don't know that type of how that type of museum exhibition was actually laid out. And when the British Museum undertook big renovations and add-ons about probably 2 decades ago, that space started to open up. But now, it's been like, I don't know, 5-6 years since I studied abroad. But a few years before I got there, they kind of restored and redeveloped the Enlightenment galleries, and I actually got this when I was there, and I have been using it a lot for our Enlightenment discussions. But there's a book that I got, which is Enlightenment at the British Museum, and it talks about what the Enlightenment era was during Great Britain, and it gets into a lot to objects and how objects play into personal taste. That's why things like the British Museum were brought in to give us that substance in our culture, to give that exploration, to give personal taste, because a lot of these were in private collections before then, in cabinets of curiosity of the big wealthy of large wealthy families that still continue during that era, but now it's starting to get out more into the public. But it'd be interesting to see too where maybe some of the works during this era too, what focused on ornamentation and what focused on enlightenment. Probably the architecture of the building itself was more ornament. You can maybe think of the building itself as the shell. But then, well, then everything within inside of it is a substance, so it's not really a shell. And I try to come up with an answer, and then I prove myself wrong. But it'd be interesting to see in a cultural sense if there was also that ornament, things that they would put on display, their ornament but no substance, kind of like how we have our dime museums today. Well, they were popular in the early 1900s, but there's one in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, where it has a lot of like different paranormal, all kinds of different things, where there was like alligator man, and weird animal creation things where it was like animals put together. It was purely for ornamentation, but no substance. Like a lot of that, like the jackalope. Like I think it's a rabbit it's a rabbit with that they put antlers on. And it's not a real animal. And there's no substance because it's not a real animal. So trying to think of like if they did anything like that during the Enlightenment time period. It'd be interesting to see if that kind of like went over into the cultural aspect of like of that, because that's what I kind of got into with. It'd be interesting to see how that got into with taste. So kind of my application in a convoluted way is getting into like cultural objects that they were trying to bring out and to show to people that were like, these are how we're going to enlighten ourselves. But they also kind of have those like spoof objects where it's just like just the ornament, but there's no underlying substance. I've been dulling on for a while now. That's kind of my push and pull, tug, whatever this week. That's my rumination application. Have a good week.